So you're thinking of trying wood carving for the first time, but you're not sure where to begin and what tools to buy? Well, stick around. I'm going to be showing you all the different tools that I use here at the shop to create some of my carvings. Stay tuned. I started my wood carving career around 20 years ago, and when I started, believe me, I had no idea where to begin or what tools to even buy. Hi, I'm Brett. Welcome back here to the shop. Wood carving is a lot of fun and it's very relaxing, and I'm so glad that I found this type of medium. When I started with just basic carving and just small little projects, and one of the first tools that I bought was a set of Flexcut carving knives and gouges. These are fantastic. They're made not too far from me, about an hour north. I'm in western Pennsylvania. I'm halfway between Erie and Pittsburgh, and these just happen to be made in Erie, Pennsylvania. Again, I've been using these for over 20 years, and I think they're fantastic. They're relatively inexpensive, and for somebody that just wants to start wood carving and learning the basics, I highly recommend checking out Flexcut tools. They hold an edge, they're easy to sharpen, and I have nothing but good things to say about them, and I still use them. I have been slowly transitioning into the Swiss-made. Been trying to find antique ones, and again, I like using older tools, and I found this set and I bought them a couple of years ago, so I've been slowly transitioning, but I still find myself using the Flexcut tools all of the time. From there, I moved on to power carving, and when I learned power carving, I was fortunate that about an hour and a half away from here is Mansfield, Ohio. And in Mansfield, Ohio, there happened to be one of the last remaining carousel factories in the country located there. They actually built carousels from the ground up. I had a magazine subscription to Carousel News and Trader, and I'm not even quite sure if they're still in publication or not. If they are, again, if you're interested in carousels, take a look at the Carousel News and Trader. But in the back of that, there was an ad that you could take a one-week course on how to carve carousel horses, and they would help you and get you started. And so I took them up on that offer, and I went out for a week and I got to learn with some of the masters there. And I learned a lot about carving in just those 5 or 7 days that I was there. One of the things that they taught me was power carving. And so the tools that I'm using here are the same tools that they used at the carousel factory, and this was back in the 90s, about 1996, 1997, roughly around that time frame. But I'm sure that they are still using these tools today, and a lot of your professional chainsaw carvers and artists are using these same tools. So we'll start off with my 4-inch grinder. This is from Kutzall, and I'll put a link in the description on where you can get all of these tools that I'm using here. So Kutzall, this is an extra coarse carbide tipped 4-inch blade for the grinder. I started using this about 2 years ago. I used to use the chainsaw. In fact, I was looking around the shop to see if I still had it, and I believe I got rid of it because it's so dangerous. But it's a small chainsaw 4-inch tool that you can put on your grinder, and I was always scared to death to use that tool. I would use it, and I would use it just to rough in, but I was always so careful of that tool. It just scared me to death. And I used it for the better part of 15 years, if not more, until I finally got rid of it. And I went over to Kutzall and I got one of their extra coarse attachments. And let me tell you, this takes off just as much material than what the chainsaw bit did. And I really do like this. Every one of these tools I have the highest respect for, and I'm very, very careful. I wear gloves. I do the best I can to protect myself. Of course, accidents can happen, but fortunately, over all the years that I've been doing this, I have not had, well, knock on wood, not had any major catastrophes or any major, hurt fingers or anything like that. But Kutzall makes an extra coarse blade. This is what I use when I start to rough in my horses and the different animals that I make. Takes material off just lightning fast, and it has holes cut into the blade that you can actually see as you're carving. When this is spinning at full RPM, you can see the material that you're taking off. So this is almost like a window. And again, you can take off material very, very fast with this. After I'm done roughing in, I go over to this bit. This is a medium coarse. I don't go anything more than just a medium coarse, just to clean up the rough edges. When I'm done with this, I'll transition over to this. This is by Saburrtooth. Again, medium grip, carbide tipped, 4-inch, has the same windows cut in it, and this will start smoothing out everything that the Kutzall extra coarse did. So this will start fine-tuning all of that, and I can start shaping a little bit more and getting into some different areas, and it's not as aggressive. I'll transition to that. From there, I'll go into this tool, and again, this tool I just started using a few years ago. It was actually my uncle that brought this over to me and said, I think you might be able to use this. It's been laying around his shop for a number of years and he had no use for it. So I started using it. This is again by Saburrtooth. It's a 4-inch cone or tapered carbide tip blade, and we put this on a Makita die grinder. This just has saved all kinds of time, and what I use this for is when I flip the horse upside down. You'll see me in some of the videos using it. I'll flip the horse upside down and I'll do the back end up underneath the rump. It'll take the material down there quickly, and up underneath the front legs and the haunches, I can get in there and kind of scoop out and take out material there really, really quick. And again, this is something that has just been an invaluable tool to my arsenal. I also use something like this. This is Stanley. This is just a small rasp that I use here. Very, very handy. You can get in between the ears. Again, you can get up underneath the front legs and just start smoothing. Takes material off very, very quickly. I especially like using this tool when I'm demonstrating. This is kind of like, flies to honey. You start using this in a crowd of people, and you could have people walking by and you start using this, and then next thing you know, they're over there. They want to come over and see what you're doing and what you're working on. I do use this, but this is a very, very handy tool. Again, different areas that are really tight to get into, especially with small horses or some of the smaller carvings that I do. You can get into some nice tight spaces there. So that pretty much covers the tools that I use when I rough in an animal. Now I want to start talking about sanding. The first thing I grab when I'm done roughing in one of my animals is a Makita 5-inch grinder. If you don't have one of these and you're just starting power carving, you definitely have to go out and pick one of these up. Again, this is something that I learned from the Carousel workshop back in the 90s, and this is what they used as soon as they roughed in one of their large Carousel horses, is a 5-inch Makita grinder. So everything that I'm showing you here today is pretty much what I learned back in the 90s on how and what they were using to build, to make their Carousel horses. Makita 5-inch grinder, I put 80 grit paper on this. I don't use anything other than that. That pretty much smooths it right out and takes it down very, very quickly. From that, I move over to my palm sander. Now, palm sanders, this is kind of a tricky thing. Always used Porter Cable 5-inch orbital sanders here at the shop, and I used them for years up until about 2 years ago. Porter Cable, for some reason, I guess they improved their palm sander, but it just never had the same feel, and it didn't seem to sand the way that their previous models did all of those years. So I stopped using Porter Cable, and I started looking again for different sanders to use, and I came across Harbor Freight, the Bauer line. They put out a 5-inch orbital sander, and it was very inexpensive. Of course, everything at Harbor Freight is very inexpensive, and my attitude is I use my tools, especially sanders, pretty hard here at the shop. So I'll go through a couple of sanders in maybe a year or 2 years or so. So, you know, I just don't see the need for buying top brand, top name sanders when I'm basically going to burn them up and use them the way I use them. So the Bauer line at Harbor Freight works fantastic. I think I paid 20 bucks for this, and it works great. This is still my first one. I've been using it for over a year. I'm probably getting to the point where I'm going to need to replace it, but right now, works fantastic. I like using orbital sanders when I carve, when I do these animals and start sanding them. You really can get into some different areas and some tight areas with this. I've just kind of taught myself how to use a palm sander with these animals, and I will start with 60 grit, I go to 80 grit, and then 120 grit. I don't really go anything beyond 120 grit when I'm finished and when I'm smoothing out and just finishing off the animal for paint. So 120 grit is about as high as I go, but I really do. I've used palm sanders, love them. I think they work great. From there, we'll start talking about this tool. Again, power carving, you're getting into anything like this, pick one of these up. This is from Sand-O-Flex. I use 80 grit and I use 120 grit paper on these. The nice thing about these is they will actually contour and they will shape as they're spinning. They will wrap around an area, like for instance the leg, and you can actually just see that leg just start to form as you're working it and sanding it. And so you can adjust your paper, you can just undo the knob, pull this out a little bit, and as it spins, it'll just kind of pull out by itself. It has horsehair backing, so that it gives a little bit of a nice soft backing, so you're not scoring the wood too much. And again, 80 grit, 120 grit, these are fantastic. I love using these. I also picked this up a few years ago. This is a microplane. This really I only use in one area, one or two areas. Mainly, I use the area where the back of the neck meets the body. That area there, it's kind of hard to get the palm sander in that area, and so you can go over that real lightly. This just attaches to the 3/8 drill, and I'll say too, let me back up and say that the Sand-O-Flex attachments you use with a 3/8 drill. The microplane, put it in a 3/8 drill, light pressure when you use this, and it's a little bit tricky to use. Low RPM, you don't want it full speed. You can, but I pretty much go a low RPM, real light pressure, and I just go down the back of the neck and just start lightly taking off the material. And again, it takes out the gouge marks left behind by my grinders and areas that the sander can't get in. It'll just smooth that area out perfect, and then you can go in with 80 grit with your Sand-O-Flex and just kind of work that and smooth that right out. Works great. My paper, the company that I use when I get my sanding paper here, for instance, the 5-inch hook and loop, I use Klingspor. That's the company that I use. Again, I'll put a link in the description where you can buy and where you can find Klingspor products. I buy it right online, and they send it to me in bulk, so I always have a nice supply of sandpaper here. A friend of mine that's a chainsaw carver turned me on to this, and again, this is put out by Klingspor. These are fantastic. They're flap wheels. I get them at 80 grit and 100 grit. They have a bit of one of the scouring pads or that kind of thing. It's a sponge that's in between with different layers of paper. And I'll tell you what, I am so glad that he turned me on to these. This is another one of these tools that once you get used to it and you start using it, you don't know how you did it without it. Use it in a 3/8 drill again, and when you're like an 80 grit and you can get into down around the neck, up underneath the jaw, in between the legs, you can again carve with this with this sandpaper, you can get in and it doesn't take much pressure at all, and you can really get in and shape some areas and really fine tune the areas like the neck and up underneath the jawline, the legs, different areas. Fantastic tool. I can't say enough good about these. Moving on with sandpaper, my sanding sponges. I'll use these primarily in the paint booth, and I keep these in bulk. I keep 120 and 220 grit on hand. Klingspor, again, these are by far the best sanding sponges that you can get. I love these things, and I've been using these for over 20 years. I've used different sponges, and to me, a lot of them just don't have the same feel that these ones do. And these are great when you're in the paint booth right after you primer or right after you finish. I might use 120 after I primer just to knock off the grain that was raised from the paint. And when I'm finishing between coats, I'll use 220 grit, and it takes it right down. They work fantastic. So definitely recommend the sanding sponges. Now, we'll talk a little bit about safety. I try to use safety glasses as much as I can. I know I've got to wear them 100% of the time, but I'm only human. A lot of times I'm moving here pretty quickly, and I do forget to put them on. And so I apologize if you don't see me wearing them all the time, but I do try to wear them. When I'm outside carving, I always had trouble trying to find glasses that would not fog up on me. Those of you that do this and carve, or if you're just starting, I found these. Now, I'm going to warn you right now, these are not safety rated. These are not safety glasses. They're just a goggle. But again, what I'm doing here at the shop, I'm not getting into chainsaw carving. I don't get into real heavy carving. So I'm primarily just trying to keep the dust out of my eyes. So I came across these. I found these on eBay. I think I paid somewhere around 25 bucks for them. And they have a battery pack in the back, and they actually have a little micro fan built into them. And so when you hit the button, it starts circulating air inside the goggles, and it'll make that the condensation, and it'll just make that fog go away. Just perfect. And I use that in conjunction with the Dust Be Gone mask. And again, I've tried different masks. I've tried them all. And I came across the Dust Be Gone mask. And what I really love about these, this one's probably 2 or 3 years old. What I love about these is you can wash them out at night. So a little bit of warm soapy water, I just massage it in my hand and then wring it out and kind of spin it outside just to get some of the water out of it, and just let it, hang it up and just let it dry, and it's ready to go for the next day. Love the Dust Be Gone masks. Again, if you're just getting started and you're looking for a good mask, check them out. I think they're fantastic. And then last but not least, I don't know again how I did it all of these years without something like this. These are put out by 3M. These are noise canceling headphones, but they also have Bluetooth technology, so I can pipe my music in and listen to the music. For years I was carving animals and carving, and I was just listening to the music that the 4-inch grinder would put out. And believe me, that just give you a headache after about 4 or 5 hours of grinding away. And I just never really thought about it. But yeah, I came across these. I think I found these at Walmart of all places. They were on a clearance counter, and I picked them up and I thought, why didn't I ever try these? And I'm telling you, these are fantastic. This has changed the way I carve, because now when I'm outside carving or when I'm out or in the shop running around, put these on, connect my music up to them, and I don't hear the grinders anymore, and I just hear music. And I'm telling you, this has just changed the way I do things around here at the shop. So again, check out 3M, check these out, and I highly recommend them. That pretty much covers all of the tools that I use here when I'm creating these animals, and I hope this was beneficial to you. If it was, please think about giving this a thumbs up, and again, think about subscribing. You can check me out on Instagram at Greenfield Woodworks, and Facebook, Greenfield Woodworks, and of course my website, greenfieldwoodworks.com. I know this wasn't a real long video this week, but I thought this was important, and I really wanted to touch the tools that I use and kind of show you some of the tools and introduce you to this and what I use. And I hope this helps you out. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you here at the shop next week.